Supreme Court has decided to hear a case about whether the most commonly available form of abortion, the medication mifepristone, can remain widely available across America. This is the first major case involving abortion that the Supreme Court has considered since the conservative justices stripped away that right for women last year. The potential impact on limiting access to this pill, it cannot be overstated. Mifepristone is vital for the millions of women living in anti-abortion states. And women, even in deep blue states where abortion is legal, will feel the effects as well. The Supreme Court's decision to hear this case comes after Texas's controversial ruling this week, telling Kate Cox, a woman desperately seeking an abortion while 20 weeks pregnant with a baby who would not survive, forcing her to go out of state for care. Joining our conversation, O'Neill Professor of Constitutional Law and Global Health Policy at Georgetown Law School, Michelle Goodwin, is here, and President and CEO of the Planned Parenthood Action Fund, Alexis McGill-Johnson. Lisa remains with us. Alexis, let's talk about the stakes, the potential impact of the mifepristone case.
I mean, you laid it out in drawing the connection directly from Kate Cox to the implication for millions of potential patients across the country, right? We are seeing the real implication of what it looks like when politicians and courts make decisions for patients and providers. When Ken Paxton and the Texas Supreme Court can decide whether or not Kate Cox gets access to life-saving care. And now you have the Supreme Court making decisions about abortion medication instead of the FDA. Millions of patients use access to medication abortion, have done so safely and effectively for the last 20 years. And I think it is critically important now when you have over half of abortions done by medication abortion that people understand immediately as a provider that the mifepristone will continue to be available. And it's important to reassure folks and also alarm folks that, in fact, mifepristone is before the Supreme Court again. What more can we say after this week?
I do not envy the duality that you are contending with there. Michelle, you and I often talk about how abortion rights and the fight for democracy are actually not two separate fights. They are very much intertwined. Vox reporting this. While the court seems likely to decide that judges shouldn't be allowed to upend the nationwide availability of a common drug, the fact that these cases are once again before the court is a reminder of just how broken the federal judiciary is. Your reaction to this case just getting as far as in the courts as it has?
So, Alicia, thank you for centering this again. And you're right, we talk a lot about democracy and how these cases do have significant impacts on democracy today. And I think what we see is a broken democracy across the United States, in states where there are people who have no access to reproductive health care. In Texas, while the Supreme Court there said that there is a significant exemption in the state's abortion ban, certainly that does not seem to hold true in any meaningful way, given that Kate Cox now has to leave the state with a non-viable pregnancy where she's already sought medical counsel, where doctors have already said it's non-viable and that her health is at risk. If you have across the United States people who may die before they're able to get the reproductive health care that they need, then that is a broken system, and it's reflective of a broken democracy. And it's worth noting that in the majority of those anti-abortion states, the majority of the legislature happens to be male, with very insignificant small percentages of women who are representing the constituents in that state.
Here's the thing, Lisa, we all know well, which was this was a conservative legal runaround blue state legislatures. And yet, I just want to be clear and put a fine point on this because you alerted me to this. The plaintiffs in the Casamara case, they did not get everything they wanted.
No, they didn't get everything they wanted. They didn't get what they wanted from the Fifth Circuit. And then they tried to take that to the Supreme Court. They asked the Supreme Court, please review the original year 2000 decision to approve mifepristone. And today, in granting cert, agreeing to take the case, the Supreme Court accepted two petitions, one from the FDA, one from a drug manufacturer. But what it notably did not do is agree to review that original decision. So irrespective of what happens here, there will be some access to mifepristone. But to Alexis and Michelle's point, perhaps not enough, and perhaps not to millions of women for whom that difference in how many weeks pregnant they are, how many doctor's visits they'll have to make, will make the most difference of all, Alicia.
Alexis, I want to circle back to this question of Kate Cox. So sometimes I think when we talk about abortion access, it can sound like numbers. It can feel very anonymous. Someone like Kate Cox puts a face a name, a real story on that. NBC News, we asked both Texas senators, both of whom, as you know, fiercely opposed to abortion rights, about the case of Kate Cox. This is what John Cornyn said. I'm not a state official, so I'm not going to comment on what state officials are doing. I'm happy to comment on anything that I'm responsible for. Real show of courage there, Alexis.
You know who showed courage, Alicia? Kate Cox, right? By suing the state, by putting her name and telling her story and sharing with so many of us the pain and the trauma that she and her family were going through, and describing what her journey has been like to this point. I think it is shameful that the senators of Texas, the U.S. federal senators of Texas, continue to push blame or responsibility on the state of Texas when there are many opportunities for the U.S. Congress to act on protecting women's health. And that, I think, is really what is going to continue to be at stake next year. So I'm celebrating the bravery of folks like Kate Cox, and the Center for Reproductive Rights, who brought the case. And really, I think we should be shaming the likes of Ken Paxton, the likes of the Texas Supreme Court, and the folks who will not step up and do anything to protect us.
Right, because here's the thing, Michelle, you can have this conversation in the context of reproductive rights. You can also have this conversation in the context of big government overreach. Ms. Magazine reporting this. In October, an Ohio woman was charged with a felony after her miscarriage. On November 30th, her case was bound over to a grand jury. This is part of a larger trend of prosecutors and judges weaponizing the law to punish and control pregnant women. This is what you have been arguing your entire career, Michelle.
Well, that's right. I mean, my book, Policing the Womb, which came out in 2020, was 10 years in the making of documenting exactly this, what is happening. We have in South Carolina lawmakers that have proposed the death penalty for women who go out of state even to obtain abortions, and doctors. We have Louisiana, that is also where lawmakers there have proposed the death penalty. You have in Texas the crushing effects on doctors, making it up to 99 years incarceration, $100,000 fine, losing license. All across the country, there's the weaponization against doctors. There's the weaponization against patients. You have states where bridges that would have been too far a few years ago, where there are now no exceptions for rape or incest. You see the cruelty that is being unpacked in the United States, while it is also the deadliest place in all of the developed world for a person to be pregnant. There is nothing but cruel and unusual punishment that is associated with these states' abortion bans.
Alexis, I have about a minute left, but I want to make sure we get in this headline about what is happening in Florida. Florida, one of 9 states where groups are pushing to get measures on the ballot that would bar restrictions on abortion rights. Republican voters are coming out publicly to support and even advocate for it, but the state's Republican Attorney General Ashley Moody has filed a brief urging the state Supreme Court to keep the question from appearing on the ballot, regardless of how many signatures are collected. They don't want people to get abortions. They don't want people to have access to health care. They also don't want people to exercise their fundamental rights as Americans.
They're afraid. Is actually how you would end that sentence, right? Because here's what's happening right now in Florida. Florida is the most important state right now to protect abortion access in the South. It is a critical access point for millions of people across the South right now. Floridians protecting freedom have done such an extraordinary job over the last few months, right? They have gotten 1.4 million petition signed so far. That is well ahead of the 900,000 needed to get the petition on the ballot. And that also includes, Alicia, 200,000 Republicans. So that is why they are trying everything they can to thwart democracy, because that is their only pathway to essentially fight getting abortion access remaining secure for Floridians and the millions of people who are relying on them in the South. And I could not agree with Michelle Goodwin more, right? That abortion and democracy are so inextricably linked at this moment. And that's why we have to continue fighting.